Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zev Eleff, who will deliver greetings from the PhD class of 2015.
In 1896, undergraduate editors at a college not too far from here quoted a wise man. The unidentified sage was Matthew Arnold. Culture, wrote the English literary critic on a number of occasions, is the best which has been thought and said in the world. Arnold had repeated and reaffirmed this refrain many times in response to opponents who had used the line as the basis of a strong and reasonable disapproval of the so-called unusable humanities curriculum. For decades, the debate captivated undergraduates in England, both those who sided with Arnold and those who wished to become practical men of the sciences and mechanical training. In the 1880s, Arnold traveled to New York and to Boston. Here, he rehearsed his arguments for the humanities and, in so doing, politicized the best which has been thought and said for American students as well. Perhaps the undergraduates who had concealed Arnold's identity wished to employ his creed while avoiding that entrenched controversy that was so often associated with its famous writer. Permit me, though, to indulge the controversy. Many of us here are not practical women and men, at least as Arnold's critics would have viewed it. Practical people are slated to attend other commencement ceremonies and celebrate the attainment of practical knowledge, perhaps in business or in science. Yet, it is an admirable achievement that so many of us on undergraduate and graduate levels have read and debated the best of our respective disciplines. In our exposure to the humanities, a great number of books have called on us to become good and kind. This alone renders the humanities worthwhile. Of course, no one here did it alone. I hope that for a few years you have sought out teachers to read along with you. I hope that you are unashamed and ask them to explain the hard parts and debated the most crucial paragraphs and tones that bordered on irreverence. In the words of King Solomon, I hope that you earnestly can claim, here I have grown and accumulated knowledge. I hope that you have found it that. Yes, I certainly did. And that you claim a moment to say thank you. For a full consideration of the humanities, however, this is not enough. Arnold himself once admitted that his mantra was best suited for minds with small aptitude that stood to minimally benefit to gain some hold on sound judgment and useful knowledge. Solomon would have concurred. For all of his esteemed knowledge, the sagacious king cherished wisdom above all. Wisdom is more than the best which has been thought and said in the world. It is more than just a smattering of fascinating facts and interesting ideas stitched together with varied punctuation. The wisdom of the humanities rests within the thoughtful marginalia and clever scribbles that bear witness to lucid examination of remarkable texts. The best of us leave Waltham with entirely new vocabularies to articulate greater heft and depth of thought. The student of the humanities is exhausted from the many hours of thinking deeply on a subject, but stirred awake by the thrill of reviewing the logical developments of a clear and sharp mind. The brightest of this assembly is analytical and creative, undaunted by the complexities of a situation that awaits its cogent solution. Women and men devoted to the humanities have learned to think well. In this way, they too are practical people. Yours is a calculus that matches the sober studies of the mathematician, and a probing sort of analysis that rivals the scrutiny of the most careful scientist. For some, like me, this is the first, second, or third of many commencement exercises, as we will spend long and respectable lives within the university, teaching and proving the merits of the knowledge and wisdom accumulated in lecture halls. Others, most of us, will adapt their talents and skills to other arenas. Members of this latter group will distinguish themselves not by a firm command of the best which has been thought and said, but by thinking with a level of sophistication on par with the great women and men who once thought and said it. Much is at stake. Mine is certainly not a call for a complacent celebration of unfettered or overindulged liberal intellectualism. Politics and partisanship make for vulnerable and sometimes wretched scholarship. I see it most poignantly in my work as a historian. Too often, arguments are stretched thin by a dearth of data, primary sources manipulated or ignored altogether to prove a provocative point of view. My peers in other fields can attest to similar abuses. Not every great novel can be subject to the same sort of literary scrutiny. Not every predicament is meant to be interpreted with the tools of a genuine postmodern theorist. In the end, the integrity of the humanities is our most crucial virtue in our enterprise. Recall Solomon and Arnold. You've attained much knowledge here, some of the best of all that has been thought and said. Be circumspect and forever wise with how you use it.